So good morning, everybody. This is class 8 in the mimer Havaya Li B'ozrai, and that is the third mimer in the book Defiance and Devotion, which are discourses from the previous Rebbe. If you are in the book, then we're on page 83, and if you're following the link that I emailed out, the link, it would be in section 7, almost at the end of the mimer, which we're pretty much I think we'll finish today, and I hope we'll start the review today as well. So this class is going to be dedicated to the memory of Meir ben Mendel HaKohen, whose yahrzeit is today. So we'll keep that in mind as we're doing our learning. Okay, so we're up to the paragraph on this basis. So in this section,
Chaya,
yeah.
Could you also do the class in memory of my sister, whose yahrzeit also today?
What's her name?
Miriam Bat Rochel.
Let's do after passing. It's by the father, Miriam, and then the father.
Ruvain.
Miriam Bas Ruvain. Okay, Hashem should have an aliyah. Okay. If there's time at the end of class and people want to share a story about Meir ben Mendel and Miriam Bas Ruvain, we could do that too. So what we're in the middle of section 7, and we're starting to answer the questions of the mimer. So I don't think I'm going to review from the very beginning, because this sort of is a review at the end. It's going through all of the. I'm just going to review section 7, which is basically the beginning, the answers to the questions that the mimer began with. So this is, again, it's going to be, there were 6 questions basically of the mimer, and we've answered a few of them now in this section, and we're going to answer the rest of them, God willing, and then we hopefully will start the review. So just to review from the beginning of section 7, which is page 81, right? The previous Rebbe explains that David HaMelech was compared to the sphere of Malchus, the last of the 7 mitvos, sovereignty or kingship. He was the head of all of the dynasty of the kings, and that idea of Malchus is the idea of prayer, which prayer, davening, is a down to up, and it's a downward yearning to go upward kind of direction, which is refining and elevating the world, versus Torah learning, which is an upward to downward revelation, right? When we daven, it's our davening, we're trying to reach out to Hashem. When we're learning Torah, Hashem is reaching out to us and revealing himself to us. So davening is an upward elevating kind of experience and thrust in divine service, and Torah learning is going from above to below, Hashem reaching out to us. So David, when he said the phrase, remember this was our question about why was he punished for calling Torah songs. So David HaMelech said, your statutes were my songs when I dwelled in fear, which refers to his Torah learning. So David was saying that with the power of Torah learning, he would cut off the forces of evil. The word for songs also means to cut off. So he would use Torah to cut off the forces of evil. But as the Rebbe explains, this is not the purpose of creation. The purpose of creation is not to cut things off and destroy them, which is being called chaos here, but that it should be settled. The world should be settled. It should be a place of settled godliness, which means that mankind should involve himself with the task of refining the world and then that draws godly light down into the world. So David was punished, rebuked really, for trying to go up higher than the worldly existence through just the direction of davening. Hi Malka, hi Kayla, Sarah, I see y'all. Hi Marcy. People started to come on. My camera's upside down, so that's why I'm not showing my face today. For some reason, I'm upside down, which I think is giving everybody a headache.
My computer didn't work. That's why I'm late.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's time to get to you guys.
Some technology issues going on. Anyway, we're in the middle of reviewing section 7, basically, is what we're up to now. So, so that was the answer to that question, and then that was the last question we had, and then the first question is also answered. We already answered, right? That it says the mimer is based on the verse, God is among those who help me, and we asked the question, only Hashem helps us. How come that's in plural? How can we say among those who help me, like as if there's many, many? And really, we know that everything is up to Hashem, but that also answers that question, because what we're saying is that a person's helpers are the parts of the world that he has elevated and refined, and then they become his helpers, so to speak, because the godly sparks that have been redeemed, are sort of attributed to him, and they become his helpers. So that's why it says Hashem is among those who help me. Those who help me, that's in plural, are all the sparks and the world, the parts of the world that the person has refined through his refining of himself and his work in the world. And then, we added even a deeper idea. The Rebbe added an even deeper idea that the term in Hebrew is Havaya Li B'ozrai. God is to me among those who help me. We loosely translate it as God is among those who help me, but the word in Hebrew literally means like God is for me, like to me, for me, among those who help me. And so the Rebbe adds that when a person is working in this idea of self-refinement, then Hashem shines upon him, basically. He is to the person, like there's a godliness in them. And God is also among those who help me, meaning godliness is also revealed within the parts of the world that he has elevated, because he's elevated and refined and brought out that godly spark in the world. And then the second question of the mimer was what does it mean, I will witness the downfall of those who hate me? That's the second half of the verse that the mimer was based on, right? God is among those who help me. May I witness the downfall of those who hate me. So what's where does that come in? Why does it say witness the downfall? Why not the elevation or the rectification or the transformation? So the answer is the downfall of those who hate me means that once a person has extracted the godliness from the physicality, from what he's trying to refine, whether it's himself or the world around him, once he has worked on that rectification and that extraction of godliness, then the result of that is that the unholy part, the negativity, the other side, the klipa, just sort of like disintegrates. So that's the downfall of those who hate me. In other words, he's taken out the soul, so to speak, and then the physicality of it just sort of disintegrates. When the godliness is removed, the evil part is just nullified. So that's what the downfall of those who hate me refers to. So that's where we got up to last week, and now we're starting fresh with at the paragraph of on this basis. And again, we're going to be answering each of the questions now, and then finishing the mimer, and then I have a review sheet prepared so we can start from the beginning, hopefully, and just end review. And it may take more than one class, I'm not sure, but then after that, maybe we can have, if I bring in maybe the next class, what do people gain out of this mimer? So we're sort of like wrapping it up now. Okay, so we're on the top of page 83 again, if you're in the book, and if you're not in the book, if you're in the link, we're in section 7, like the last half of section 7, starting with the paragraph on this basis. On this basis, we can also resolve our opening questions regarding the statement of our sages. A person who comes to purify himself is granted assistance. Remember, that was the next two questions, was why is that in plural? And the plural form is used for the verb granted assistance. Why is that? To refer to the many godly sparks which he refines. Again, the granted assistance, what is assisting the person, as we already answered that question, what's actually assisting the person is the godly sparks that he's refined in the world. They now become part of his team, become part of his corner in his walk through life. So it's the same answer to the first question, is why does it say God is among those who help me, as if there's other people or entities helping us? Well, it is. All the godliness that we refined is becomes part of our strength in the world. And that's the same case here, that somebody who comes to purify himself is granted assistance. He's granted assistance from all the work that he's done. It's like he's done this work and then it becomes easier for him to do this work just on a physical level, right? Even on an emotional level, psychological level, physical level, when a person has trained their muscles, whether it's a physical muscle or an emotional muscle or a psychological muscle, the more that they do it and the more that they succeed, the more strong they get in that area. And in a certain sense, it's the same way spiritually, right? The more that we refine ourselves and the more that we elevate the world around us, then those on a like a mystical level, the godliness that we've encountered and connected to in ourselves and in the world around us comes to our aid in continuing that godly work. And just on a sort of realistic level, like a practical level, success breeds success, right? So we connect to the godliness that makes it easier for us to connect to the godliness. We've refined ourselves, that makes it easier for us to refine ourselves. So the plural for granted assistance refers to those godly sparks which he's refined. Now remember, we had a second question on that quote, which was, why is the verb transitive? What's the conjugation of the verb? So this also explains why the transitive form of the infinitive lataher is used to purify, right? To purify something else. For as a result of one's own refinement and the revelation of the godly light in the world, one purifies others as well. In other words, it doesn't say specifically that he's purifying others, but it's a transitive verb. So what is he purifying? He must be purifying something if it's using a transitive verb. And the response is that yes, as he refines himself and he refines the world around him, that helps to purify others as well. In particular, this applies with regards to teaching Torah publicly, for the Torah is light and this generates merit for the public. So when a person is purifying the world through Torah study, especially teaching Torah publicly, that purifies other people as well. And therefore, when he's coming to purify himself, automatically he's also affecting others, especially if it's teaching Torah publicly. The Previous Rebbe spoke incessantly about teaching Torah publicly because, what was going on in his world, right, was communism, and why he was incarcerated to begin with. Remember, this book is a book that tells the story basically through his mimer, through his mimarim of teaching Torah during that year. Basically, we see, I would say, we have a window into the Previous Rebbe's world of Chassidus, how he dealt with the situations that were going on under the communists through his Chassidus that he was teaching. How he taught to be fearless in the face of these people. And when, gathering was not allowed, he was gathering hundreds of Chassidim, or I should say, he was teaching Torah, and hundreds of Chassidim came at the risk of their life to hear the Torah. And he was saying how important it was, even though he knew, right, in the first mimer that we learned, which is the one that got him arrested officially, right, even though he knew that there were informers and spies in the audience, he still went on and taught Torah publicly because regard to teaching Torah publicly, it purifies others as well. So he was doing his job, his his best to create a situation where he was purifying the air around him and the people around him, especially in the face of all the terrible things that the communists were doing. So it was even more important to do that. And we see here that he's explaining almost like his thought process. Where did he get this idea from that this is so important to do in the face of this opposition? And this mimer is sort of walking us through that, right? Like Hashem helps, and the downfall of the enemies are going to happen. And, I'm going to purify myself and the people who are listening to this Torah teaching and the world around by doing this. He sort of gives us a peek into what his motivation and his strategy is for overcoming the Soviets. So this is what happens. When one teaches Torah publicly for the Torah's light, this generates merit for the public. So he's going to affect the whole world by doing this ultimately. And this is the meaning of David's request. Remember, we said, why does David say that he wants to see he wants to witness the downfall of those who hate me versus their transformation? This is the meaning of David's request. May I witness the downfall of those who hate me. Although they included individuals such as Doeg and Achitophel, who were his physical enemies, who appeared to conduct their lives according to the Torah, David made this request with the intent that the truth be revealed, that these individuals hated God. They did not desire the revelation of godliness, and more particularly the revelation of Havaya, which transcends the limits of nature. They desired to live by the natural order and mortal reason. This is the direct opposite of the true unity expressed in the above quoted statement, Havaya and Elokim are one. Right? That was from the very beginning of the Maimer. Wasn't an exact question, but it was an elaboration of the question about how, everything is one in Hashem, and Havaya and Elokim are one, even though Havaya is above nature and above creation, and Elokim is within nature, the godliness is within nature. And so, but it's actually all one. And these people went against that. They pretended to be pious or whatever it is, conduct their lives according to Torah, but they really weren't, and they didn't really want to bring Havaya into Elokim. They wanted to live according to natural order and mortal reason. And so David was asking to expose that duplicity so that people wouldn't be, I guess, misled or whatever it was. That's another aspect of witness the downfall of their inappropriate behavior, basically. And now remember, another question was, what's the connection between the first half and the second half of the pasuk? How do they go together? So that was the third question on the quote that we started with. So we can now appreciate the juxtaposition of the two clauses of the phrase. When God is among those who help me, then I will witness the downfall of those who hate me. Meaning that's what happens when Hashem is revealed and the godly sparks are redeemed and purification is happening all over, then we will witness the downfall of those who hate me, meaning those who are opposed to godliness. We'll see their downfall. What does this mean? Why does it say we'll witness the downfall? Wasn't it just say they will have a downfall? That the level of sight is the level hinted at in the teaching. Who is a wise man? One who sees the future. Literally, the word sees the future in Hebrew is haray es hanailad, which means who sees that which is to be born. A phrase which allows for an extended meaning. Haraya es hanailad literally means that which is to be born, or that which is born. So in the context of the simple meaning of the phrase, it means a wise person sees the results of his action, like what's going to happen from what he does. So it's like, he anticipates this behavior will lead to a good outcome. This behavior will lead to not a good outcome. Control this behavior because it's just going to be a momentary indulgence, which is not going to do any good. Work on this outcome, work on this behavior because it will come to a more holy outcome. So somebody who sees the future, a wise person sees what's going to be born, meaning the simple meaning is what's going to be born from whatever the choices he's making right now. But now we're going to translate that phrase even deeper, right? So who's a wise person? One who sees what's going to be born means one who sees how every entity came into existence from absolute nothingness. In other words, not like how my behavior will cause something to happen in the future, but rather a wise person is somebody who sees how everything came into being, how everything was born. How was everything born? Like through God. So what we're saying now is God is amongst those who help me. I will witness the downfall of my enemies. What does witness mean? Witness means I'm seeing something. What does seeing mean? Seeing means I see how everything came into being from godliness. So therefore, what we're saying is perceiving God's sublime unity at this level is known as Yichud Ilah. It is solely through confronting opposition that this level can be attained. That perceiving, what does it mean? That when a person sort of sees the downfall of their enemy, and seeing is understanding how everything came into being, and understanding how everything came into being means I understand that everything came into being from God, and that's existing at the level of this supernal unity. Yichud Ilah means supernal unity, how everything is just a part of God, and there's nothing that came into existence without God, and everything is godliness. So it's this is a fascinating line that the previous Rebbe puts in, and he would know, right? Like he would know this because this was his life story. He says it is solely through confronting opposition that this level can be attained. In other words, only through confronting opposition can a person reach the level of seeing that which is to be born, means that everything comes from Hashem and is subsumed within Hashem. And I imagine that that is what gives somebody like the previous Rebbe the strength to confront it and say, I'm not listening to Stalin, I'm not listening to the Soviets, I'm not listening to these people who are, pretending to be at, for the good of mankind, when really what they're trying to do is, knock God out of the world. I see what is to be born, meaning I see that everything comes from godliness, and these people are not necessary to be listened to, because they're opposing godliness, and I'm for godliness, so to speak, and they sort of, in a certain way, bring us face to face with godliness, because confronting an enemy like that forces a person to it's going to sound funny, but forces a person to, so to speak, choose sides, right? Like the side of material or the side of godliness, because it's such a stark contrast. So confronting the enemy, an opposition like this, creates a situation where a person sees that which is to be born, and it becomes clear. How are people doing with this idea? I can't see any faces because none of us have screens on today.
Yeah, I'm nodding my head.
You're not in your head. Okay.
I'm nodding my head. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. I think it works for us too, on maybe a lower level, in the sense that we don't have, thank God, we don't have the Soviets, but we have this culture that we have to face. That's the opposition, and to push it away. And politics is so what's the word? Can't think of the word. Seductive, I think, is the word. And we have to, so there's things that we have to push. We have to look through them to see them for what they are, and then to see that they're a part of godliness, but they're not there because everything is from God, but they're not necessarily something that we should be going. Something we have to really push away. Oh, that's it. That's all. Sorry.
Yeah. It's an avodah, right? Like identifying and then pulling out the strength within us, basically.
Exactly. And it may not be life and death the way it was for the previous Rebbe, but it certainly is. It certainly does impact our lives and the way we live our lives. So in the sense, on a very small scale, it's like what the previous Rebbe has gone through.
Mhm.
Talking about many worlds, many worlds and one God, as opposed to many gods in one world.
Right. Okay. So let's continue. You want to say something? No. Okay.
I can't now. I'm having workmen and it's noisy.
Oh, okay. Okay. So when this takes place, God will be among my helpers. All those who will help a person will also be granted the revelation of the name Havaya. Meaning on the side of holiness, the name Havaya will be revealed in the person and in all the people who are helping him. Meaning it feels like the previous Rebbe is giving a bracha to all the people who helped him basically escape, unharmed from. Remember, he had been arrested, sentenced to the opposite of life, and this mimer is what he said when he was given the news he was going to be freed. He wasn't actually freed yet. In other words, this was on Yud Beis Tammuz, and Yud Gimel Tammuz he went out free, but he was told he was going to be freed. So it feels like he's almost giving a bracha to there, and there was a lot of people who were working feverishly to get him freed, right? So it feels like he's explaining almost like what happened on a mystical level. These people, these people were working from the position of God is among those who help me. May I witness the downfall of my enemies. Like that's what happened to him. And he's sort of explaining maybe how he had the strength to do it, and here, explaining how everybody who was part of it sort of is granted revelation of the name Havaya, right? I mean, that's what it feels like. He's explaining something, but it feels also almost like a blessing. Thus, too, it is written, if you extract the precious from the vulgar, you shall be as my mouth. Meaning, what is that talking about? I.e., when a person succeeds in refining his environment by bringing out the precious godliness that is hidden in a vulgar setting, he comes to resemble God's mouth, a vehicle for the expression of godliness. So that's basically what happened, right? The people succeeded in refining the environment by bringing out the precious godliness that was hidden in a vulgar setting, right? The awareness of God, within Soviet Russia, right? They had wanted to do something terrible and they weren't allowed to, basically. So the godliness was revealed in this vulgar setting, and therefore that became a mouthpiece for God everywhere. And it's interesting because when the previous Rebbe was freed, he said, it's not, Hashem did not redeem only me today. It wasn't only me who was redeemed, but the entire Jewish nation was redeemed today, right? It was he didn't represent just one man. It represented Torah against the Soviet Union, basically, right? The Jewish nation against the Soviet Union. So the result was bringing out godliness that was hidden in a vulgar setting altogether. It wasn't just personal to one person. As a result, the godliness which transcends nature will be revealed within the natural order, as in the phrase, to see the face of God, right? That's what happens. Obviously, this is a miracle, right? Looking at from the plane of nature's perspective, this is not a natural occurrence. It was not a natural occurrence for the Soviets to be brought to their knees, basically, and had to release this person who, I don't know how many people they put, to the opposite of life and arrested and all this, and then let free. I mean, I don't know what the numbers are for that. Probably this one, and the godliness which transcends nature will be revealed within nature, as in the phrase, to see the face of God. That's a phrase from Tehillim, what it says, panim, the Hebrew word for face, suggests panemius, meaning the inner dimension, which means that the inner dimension of Elokim, the name of God, which is manifest within the natural order, is Havaya, the attribute of openly revealed compassion and kindness. Meaning, like this is a general idea, right? That Havaya, the name of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, is above nature, is a part of Hashem that's above nature, that results in the creation of the world. But Elokim is the shield, right? The shield around Havaya that limits and contains the godly light so that it can come into the physical world, so there could be a physical world that's enlivened by godliness but not overwhelmed by godliness. So when we see the face of God, what that means is that we are able to see the panemius. Face means is panim is panemius, which means inner dimension, that we experience the inner dimension of the name of Hashem within the natural order. That's what it means to see the face of God. So and the attribute of Havaya is kindness. The attribute of Elokim is severity or judgment, self-judgment, whatever it is. So here, basically, it also feels like the previous Rebbe is saying that this resulted in an open revelation of the kindness of Hashem that's above nature within nature. Quite literally, that his sentence was commuted from the opposite of life to whatever it was, I think 10 years in a labor camp, to basically what wound up being 10 days in a labor camp instead. So it's like a miracle, which he's calling, seeing the face of God, meaning seeing the attribute of Havaya within nature, the attribute of God's kindness within the natural setting, which is in a miraculous setting. And then, so what?
What it reminds me of? It's like a modern day story of the Bilam story, where the curses were changed.
Interesting.
That's what it reminds me of. I don't know if,
Yeah, I could see that. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And all this godliness came flowing into the world instead of.
And by the mouth, it mentions the mouth, I think, in that story.
Yeah. Yes, it does. Yep. And now the previous Rebbe tells us, well, what do we do when this happens? Basically, we have this open revelation of godly compassion, kindness, and everything else coming and extracting the godliness from a vulgar place. And what's our response? And every kindness which God grants a person should motivate him to be extremely humble and to seek abundant mercy for his soul, requesting that God grant him assistance to toil in the study of Torah and in the service of God, so as to fulfill his intent in creation. For the Holy One, blessed be he, desired a dwelling in the lower realms. Meaning, when a person is meritorious to this kind of a miracle and kindness, he should ask God for continued kindness so that he can continue being God's mouthpiece, I guess, what he talked about earlier, right? Then he should be able to continue doing this, which really, we know, right? Because we have the benefit of hindsight. We know that the Rebbe left Russia, went to Riga, went to Poland, eventually came to America and continued to do exactly that, set up yeshivas, set up printing houses, just continue to be God's mouthpiece in America, and by extension in the whole world. This weekend was the Kinus HaShluchim, 6,500 shluchim from around the world, and supporters converged and came together for the banquet. I encourage everybody to listen to the banquet. You can listen to it on Chabad.org now. I think by now it's uploaded, I'm sure. If you didn't listen yesterday while it was happening, that the growth and the outgrowth and the spreading of godliness around the world basically, exponentially grew from this story of the previous Rebbe being released from Soviet opposite of life and eventually coming to America, and the Rebbe taking up the call to the next level. But this this sort of, in a certain way, I feel like we merit to see a little peek behind the curtain of the previous Rebbe's mindset. Like, this is what happened. What happened was God was with me among those who helped me. I'm going to witness the downfall of my enemies. And it's from David HaMelech, right? But it feels like the previous Rebbe was connecting very much to that, because that's what happened to him. Like there were this opposition to godliness. He sort of didn't let it stop him. And all of the help that he got from the physical world, obviously was a reflection of what was happening in the spiritual world, and that revelation of godliness that came into the world. And that it's not like time to, take a vacation now. It's time to take that blessing and continue it to a greater degree. And it's sort of like he's making his statement now that this is what he's going to do. And we know that he did it. We are all the recipients of this mission statement that the previous Rebbe said, because all the Chassidus that came after this, and all the Chabad houses, and all everything is from here, really, in a certain way. This juncture was a miracle that allowed for the next juncture to happen.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah.
Just how I understand the mimer, it's it feels very this mimer feels very personal to what he went through. I don't know if people want to ask questions, or they want to say anything about like a piece of the mimer that was meaningful to them. I did prepare a review sheet. I think we need a whole class to go through it. I'm not sure it makes sense to start it for the last 15 minutes of class. We could, and then we could finish it, next class. We may need more than one class anyway. It's 4 pages. Or if people just want to take a few minutes now to say something about a question or something in the mimer that they connected to, and we can begin the review next class is also fine. Whatever you want. But if anybody wants to say anything now, this would be a good time, even if we do start the review in a few minutes. Okay.
I think everybody's kind of discombobulated from the upside downness of what's going on in the screen, I think is what it is.
Yeah, I could see if I'm still upside down. I am. So I'm gonna keep it. Yes, I'm gonna keep it off. I have no idea why that's happening. Okay. Well, do we want to start the review? If people prefer to just start the review now, we could just start the review.
I kind of have a question that's a little troubling me. So these sparks, so to speak, that are transformed and goodness is brought into the world from a higher level. There's a lot of waning, and then what happens after that? Do you know what I mean? Like it remains in the world on a higher level, but then it seems like, as history moves forward, it things change to the negative again.
So
more negative, like the scale.
So
So
I think I know what you're asking. What happens to all that godliness and goodness that's brought into the world in these circumstances, when
right.
we see evil rear its head again. So I think, my thoughts about that, let's say, would be, it says in Torah that, the good that a person does, the mitzvahs that they do, the godly light that they bring into the world, that never disappears. The bad eventually does disappear, but the good never disappears. It always stays. And it is true that we see, even says in the Haggadah, right, that in every generation there are those who rise up against us. Rising up against the Jewish nation is rising up against God. It's going against godliness. So that would be the evil that the previous Rebbe was talking about here, I would believe. But I wonder, like on a metaphysical, spiritual level, the good is always there, and the evil eventually dissipates, because, like we just learned in the mimer, the evil can't stay because when we are doing the right thing, because we extract the godliness that keeps it in existence, and then it just sort of it disintegrates. But the good always stays. And at the same time, we do see that evil, another form rears its head, or this is exile, and that keeps happening. And I wonder if part of it's almost like the world gets raised to higher level awareness of godliness, more mitzvos are done, and then it's almost like our expectations are higher and our tolerance for evil becomes less, and we notice it more and it's less acceptable. So it's like it's a new breed, or a new challenge, and then the cycle has to start all over again. But it's not starting all over at ground zero. It's starting all over at a much higher level, almost like a spiral staircase. That's like, yes, the world has been refined. Maybe we started in the basement, and now we're on like the 5th floor, and we're trying to get to the roof, or something like that. But we're not. It's not the same. I mean, even the world now, right? The world is so aware of Torah and mitzvah, godliness. There's so much more. That doesn't mean that there isn't there are forces that are behaving in a way that's contrary to godliness, and there certainly are, and there certainly seems to be, very strong presence of very weird things. And at the same time, there is also a very strong presence of holy things. It's just like maybe our tolerance level is more refined now, we notice it more because we're more refined, because we're more godly. We have higher expectations of the world and other people. And it's a more refinement, so to speak, that's needed again. Like we keep, it's like we keep having, we have to get at the very bottom of the problem, or something like that, and we keep on refining it to a deeper and deeper level. I don't know.
No, I understand what you're saying.
But that good doesn't go away, right? 2,000 generations. It hasn't even been 2,000 generations. So that Hashem guards the mitzvahs that people do for 2,000 generations for their descendants. It hasn't even been 2,000 generations since the creation of the world. So,
Could someone repeat that? It was garbled.
The mitzvos that we do, the godliness that we do, says lasts for 2,000 generations for all the descendants of the people who of the person who did the mitzvahs and so on. There hasn't even been 2,000 generations since the creation of the world. Was that not garbled?
Chaya, didn't Rebbe say that evil is much more blatant now? It's not because we're closer to Mashiach, and we due to all the mitzvahs and Torah that have been done, rather than in a disguised form like it was through the generations previously. Evil was in a disguised kind of way, but now people see it for what it is.
It could be. I mean, it makes sense, right? It's like that idea again that there's been so much refining, so we're up on the last leg of it. You know what I mean? It could be that now. Also, it talks about how, right at the end, before, like, the darkest part of the night is right before the dawn. It's like darkness puts up a fight right before it's going to be gone, or like even in a physical fight right before somebody gives up. They get like a burst to try to overcome their opponent. And so they put up the biggest fight, right before they're gonna give up, kind of a thing. So it's like that could also be what's going on in the world, right? But it doesn't take away from all the good and holiness that's been done. That's still here, and that's perhaps why the other side is feeling threatened, because of all the goodness and holiness that's been done. So it has to fight for its life, so to speak. Right?
Chaya, I'm gonna log off. Molly Rousseau has just called me. I'll talk to her.
Okay.
Okay.
We should hear good news. Yeah.
Amen. Amen.
I don't know if anybody has anything else they want to say, or did that answer your question, Carolyn?
Yes, it did. I mean, what I hooked into was the idea that both evil and good is going up a level,
Right.
so the battle continues on a different level. It kind of makes sense to me.
Right.
And so I guess, let's say goodness is getting stronger, and
Right.
evil on the next level, does it get stronger too? I mean, and ultimately, in other words, we're worthy foes of each other, kind of.
That's an interesting
Do you
way
know
of
what I'm
putting it.
saying?
Well, that's what Rachel was saying, that she learned, I guess, that there's something that changes, and I mean, I guess that could be compared to the idea of the darkest time before the light,
Yeah, right. Yes.
But it's all exactly what the Rebbe was saying, the previous Rebbe was saying in this mimer. It's all, you extract the godliness, and the bad disappears. It disintegrates. It's all, like that's our job. Our job is to work with the light and to then allow the evil to sort of self-destruct,
Mm-hmm.
which is what's going to happen to it, basically.
And I suppose it's going on everywhere, and if you look hard enough, you can see it.
Probably, yeah.
In this particular situation, it's clearer.
Yeah.
But general world, it's more opaque.
Yeah.
You have to train your mind to be able to see that, and then you get inspiration.
Right. Yeah. Okay, I feel like this is a good time to. You want to say something, Sarah?
No, I was just thinking that I was out at a bas mitzvah last night, and then I came home and I missed most of the kinnis, but I did see like the dancing with the 36 new Torahs that are going out to all different Chabad houses,
Yeah.
and the work, and in like such remote places that if the Friedrich Rebbe hadn't done his work, and then the Rebbe wouldn't have picked up. Every different place you go, there's the possibility for people to do just another mitzvah, and it's really mind-boggling how beautiful it is.
Yes.
And I guess for me, when I get into the negativity, everything, all the garbage going on out there, that you just have to rein yourself in and think about the last paragraph of the mimer,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and really to prioritize what good is happening, even when we're keyed in to look for the negative.
right.
That's
Yeah,
I hope that they'll put the Guinness up and I'll be able to see what I missed, because it's always so inspiring.
yeah, I'm pretty sure by now it should be up, hopefully. You'll be able to watch it, yeah. Okay,
So
well,
thanks a lot, and I miss seeing you, even though I'm a sticker and don't come on with my face.
yeah, I've got to figure out what's going on. I don't have no idea why I'm upside down. But hopefully it'll be fixed by the next Zoom.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Chaya.
Sure,
Thank
sure.